I shot that to her face. Y'all want to shoot me in the leg?
She did everything right. She called the police. She filed the reports. She showed up to every court date and sat in rooms that made her relive the worst moments of her life because she believed that if she kept showing up, the system would protect her. It didn't. 4 felony charges, no prison time, and 3 months after a plea deal quietly reduced everything down to almost nothing, Krystal Walton was lying on the concrete of a daycare parking lot while children stood just feet away, too young to understand what they were seeing. Here's what makes this case so hard to sit with. Nothing about what happened was hidden. The abuse wasn't a secret. The threats weren't whispered behind closed doors. They were reported, documented, signed off on, filed away in a system that was supposed to use that information to keep her safe. She told police he strangled her while she was pregnant. She told them he said he would kill her. She put her name on the line, knowing the risk, knowing he was still out there, because she believed the truth would be enough. And the system took that truth, processed it, and handed it back to him wrapped in a misdemeanor and a no-contact order with a loophole. So how does a man accused of strangling a pregnant woman walk out of court with probation? How does an open arrest warrant sit unserved for weeks while a terrified mother keeps looking over her shoulder? And how does a woman who did absolutely everything she was supposed to do still end up becoming a headline? That is the story we're telling today. You're watching The Exposed Crime. We tell the stories that need to be told. Domestic violence, toxic relationships, and the lives lost behind closed doors. No sugarcoating, no excuses, just the truth. If you're new here, subscribe and join us as we shed light on stories. March 2021. Krystal Walton walked into a police station 4 months pregnant and told them exactly what Orlando Mitchell had done to her. She didn't minimize it, she didn't soften it. She said he grabbed her by the throat and squeezed until she couldn't breathe. She said he looked her in the eyes while he did it, and she said that when it was over, he told her clearly if she crossed him, he would kill her. Police took the report. Prosecutors reviewed the evidence, and Mitchell was charged with 4 felonies: strangulation, criminal confinement, intimidation, and domestic battery. 4 serious charges that carried real prison time if convicted. Now here's something the general public often doesn't know, and something that domestic violence experts have been saying for years. Strangulation is not just an act of violence, it is one of the single most reliable predictors of future homicide in abusive relationships. When a man puts his hands around a woman's throat, he is not simply attacking her in the moment. He is demonstrating that he is willing and capable of ending her life. Studies show that victims who have been strangled by a partner are 7 times more likely to be killed by that partner than victims who haven't experienced strangulation. 7 times. Krystal knew what she was living with. She knew what he was capable of because she had felt it with her own body while carrying his child. And despite that fear, despite knowing exactly what coming forward could cost her, she reported it anyway. She filed the police report, she cooperated with prosecutors, she gave her statement, she showed up when she was supposed to show up. She did every single thing that advocates and law enforcement tell victims to do when they find the courage to come forward. And the charges reflected that. 4 felonies. The kind of charges that, if pursued to their full extent, could have resulted in years behind bars and a very different outcome for everyone involved. For a moment, the system appeared to be working. The truth had been told, the evidence existed, the charges were on paper. Krystal had taken the hardest step. She had named her abuser, put it on record, and trusted that the legal process would follow through. But charges being filed and justice being delivered are 2 completely different things, and the distance between them, that invisible gap where cases stall,
deals get made, and time passes, is exactly where the danger lives. March 2022. 16 months after 4 felonies were filed against Orlando Mitchell, every single one of them was gone. Not dismissed for lack of evidence, not dropped because the case fell apart, gone because of a negotiation. A legal process that happened quietly, in the language of courtrooms and agreements, and resulted in something that must have felt like a gut punch to Krystal Walton. Mitchell pleaded guilty not to strangulation, not to criminal confinement, but to a single misdemeanor domestic battery charge. One misdemeanor for a man who had been charged with strangling a pregnant woman and threatening to kill her. No prison sentence, no extended incarceration. The court ordered probation, a mandatory counseling program, and a no-contact order. But here's where it gets worse. The no-contact order came with an exception built directly into it: child care arrangements. Because they shared children together, the court had to leave a window open, which meant that the very document designed to keep him away from her also handed him a reason to be near her. That exception wasn't unusual. Courts make that call in co-parenting situations regularly. But when you're dealing with a man who has already demonstrated he will use access as a weapon, an exception in a protective order isn't just a legal technicality, it's an opening. And Mitchell used it. Within weeks of the plea deal being finalized, violations began stacking up. Missed probation appointments, reports of continued contact, allegations of intimidation. The pattern that had existed before the charges were filed was continuing. Just now, it was wrapped around a legal framework that should have been catching it. By late August 2022, a warrant had been issued for his arrest due to probation violations. He wasn't picked up. The warrant existed, the violations were documented, the paperwork was there, but Mitchell remained free, while Krystal continued to live with the fear that the plea deal had done nothing to reduce. In fact, it may have made things worse, because now he had been through a legal process, faced minimal consequences, and had every reason to believe the system wouldn't move fast enough to stop him. The warrant sat open. Days passed, then weeks, and Krystal kept dropping her kids off at daycare, because life doesn't stop just because you're afraid.
An armed murder suspect. Just 3 hours earlier that morning, September 16th, police say Mitchell shot and killed Krystal outside a Westside daycare.
He said he shot his girl or something, I don't know.
A 911 caller at a bus stop alerted police to Mitchell's location.
He clearly admitted to his guilt, and it's pretty obvious that he wanted the police to end his life as well. He needs to suffer. He needs to feel and wake up every day and think about this devastating wave of destruction that he has caused and the outcome. He needs to be hit in the face with that every single day for the entirety of his life.
There's a specific kind of fear that comes when you've already reported someone, already gone through the legal process, already done everything right, and you're still not safe. It's not the sharp fear of a sudden threat. It's a slow, grinding dread, the kind that lives in the back of your throat when you're going through normal daily routines, the kind that makes you scan every parking lot, check your mirrors twice, hesitate before you open a door. People close to Krystal say she was living inside that fear. She had reportedly told people around her, friends, family, that she was scared of what Mitchell might do. And she said something else, something that gets repeated in domestic violence cases far more often than it should. She told people that if something happened to her, they should look at him. That statement is not the statement of someone being traumatic or paranoid. That is someone who has run out of official options and is doing the only thing left available to them. She was building a record with the people around her, because the official records hadn't been enough. Meanwhile, the probation violations continued, the open warrant remained unserved, and at some point during this period, Mitchell had access to a firearm, something prosecutors would later argue he was legally prohibited from possessing as a convicted domestic abuser. But he had one.
And here is where routine becomes deadly. Krystal had children who went to the same daycare at the same time every weekday morning. That schedule didn't change, couldn't change, because that's what it means to be a single parent trying to hold your life together while also looking over your shoulder. You wake up, you get the kids ready, you drive to the same building at the same time because that's what they need, and they come first. Predictability is a gift to someone who is watching. Mitchell knew her schedule. He knew where the daycare was. He knew what time drop-off happened. He had months of knowledge about her routine because they shared children, knowledge that was supposed to be neutral, and co-parenting logistics that were never supposed to become a blueprint for violence. But that's exactly what they became. Friday morning, September 16, 2022. Charity Child Care Center on the west side of Indianapolis. A regular morning, parents walking their kids through the front door, backpacks bobbing, children half asleep, clutching snacks and stuffed animals, the kind of scene that plays out at daycares across the country every single day, ordinary, routine, unremarkable. Krystal had just walked her kids inside. She came back out to the parking lot. Witnesses say Orlando Mitchell was there waiting for her. What happened next took only seconds. Gunshots cracked through the morning air, multiple shots, in a parking lot where parents were standing, where children had just been walking, where people go to do one of the most normal things imaginable, drop their kids off and start their day. Krystal was hit. She collapsed on the pavement. Other parents scrambled. Someone called 911. Someone else ran toward the building to make sure the children inside were safe and didn't come back out. Mitchell didn't run. He was arrested at the scene. Police arrived to a parking lot that had been transformed in seconds from a morning routine into a crime scene. Yellow tape, shell casings, a woman on the ground. She was gone. And here is the thing that has to be said clearly, because it matters. Nothing about that morning was unpredictable. It was not a sudden break. It was not a snap decision that no one could have seen coming. Every single step that led to that parking lot had been documented, reported, and filed somewhere in the legal system. Strangulation, documented. Felony charges, filed. Plea deal, processed. No contact violations, reported. Probation violations, on record. Open arrest warrant, issued. Access to a firearm, later confirmed. The shooting was the final step in a sequence that had been visible for over a year, a sequence that the system had touched multiple times without stopping it. The children inside the daycare were not physically harmed that morning, but they saw things, parents saw things, and Krystal's own children, the ones she had just dropped off minutes before, would grow up without their mother. The legal process moved forward the way it always does after the worst has already happened. Orlando Mitchell was arrested the same morning Krystal was killed. He was charged with murder. The case went to trial. The evidence was presented, the history of abuse, the protective order violations, the open warrant, the witnesses in the parking lot. The jury heard all of it. Mitchell was convicted of murder. He was sentenced to 66 years in prison. And in a narrow technical sense, justice was served. But justice at the end of a story like this is not the same as justice. It's accountability, it's consequence, it's the system finally doing what it was built to do, just years too late and one life too short. Krystal Walton's children don't have their mother. The parents who were in that parking lot that morning carry that Friday with them. And the people who loved her have to live knowing she told them what she was afraid of, told them clearly, and that fear turned out to be exactly right. She reported, she filed, she cooperated, she showed up, she told the people around her who to look at if something happened. She used every tool available to her, and she still didn't make it. That is not a failure of Krystal Walton. That is a question every single person connected to this case, every prosecutor, every probation officer, every official who touched that open warrant and moved on has to sit with. Because domestic violence doesn't begin with a murder weapon. It begins with control, slow, calculated, grinding control over someone's fear and freedom. It escalates with strangulation, which the research has told us for decades is a red flag that demands an urgent response. And it grows in the spaces where consequences are reduced, where warrants sit unserved, where loopholes become invitations. This was not unpredictable. It was documented, and that is exactly what makes it devastating. Krystal Walton was a mother. She was a woman who fought for her safety and her children's future in every way she knew how. She deserved protection. She deserved a system that moved with the same urgency as the threat she was living under. She deserved to be alive. Say her name, remember it, and don't look away from what her story is asking us to confront. If this story reached you, if it stirred something in your chest, don't let it fade when the video ends. These cases remind us that danger can hide in the everyday, that silence can cost lives, and that sometimes the smallest voice can be the one that saves someone. If you know anybody in a violent or unsafe situation, don't wait. Say something, call for help, speak up. Your voice might be the one thing standing between someone and a tragedy like this. Drop a comment, share this video, keep their names alive. And we'll be back with another story that needs to be told. This is the Exposed Crime. Stay safe out there.